Hi, my name's Daryl. I'm the owner of this beautiful 2021 RAV4 Prime that you see behind me. Now, I've done a lot of videos about the RAV4 Prime, including how to get one at MSRP and also how to get the best price on a used RAV4 Prime. But today, I'm going to talk about how to get the best price on a brand new RAV4 Prime by using something called the EV Lease Loophole. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying I am not a financial planner or an accountant, and so if you do plan on purchasing a RAV4 Prime using the methods that I'm going to talk about, I really encourage you to do your own research and really fully understand the process, and also consider talking to an accountant or a financial planner before you move forward. But let's go ahead and get into the mechanics of this. Now, as you probably know, back in August of 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law. The effect of this was kind of unexpected in that the RAV4 Prime and a lot of other EV vehicles and plug-in hybrids actually lost their $7,500 federal tax credit. But the law that was approved actually had language in there that incentivized corporations to buy EV vehicles, and it actually gave them a tax credit for doing so. Now, recently it was decided, I think about 9 months ago or so, that these corporations, they can actually take the money that they get from the government and they can pass it on to consumers that actually lease a vehicle. So yeah, that works out great for us. Now, many manufacturers, including Toyota, are taking advantage of this EV lease loophole and are giving money back to consumers. And it gets even better. So after you finalize the deal, you basically call Toyota Financial Services and you ask for the buyout amount, and then you pay that amount, and then you've saved significant money over basically purchasing new the traditional way. So to demonstrate the savings, there's a user on Reddit. He's from Colorado and he documented his entire process. He gives some tips and the best ways of doing so, but it basically took him 30 days to finish the process, and it saved him approximately $5,500 over purchasing new. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, well, shouldn't you be getting $7,500 in savings? Well, Toyota actually made the decision that instead of giving back the whole $7,500, they basically give consumers back $6,500. And also there's certain fees and stuff like that that you don't really get back when you're doing a lease. But still, to save $5,500 over purchasing new, just with the regular kind of financial way, I think it's worthwhile. And if it takes you 30 days to do so and a little bit of research, it's going to be time very well spent. Now, I've included the link to this Colorado user on Reddit, so you can click on it just to get the information directly from him, and I'd recommend that you do so. But let's go ahead and talk about the mechanics of this. Now, I created kind of a simple flowchart basically on the basic steps, and I'll talk about each of these steps here as we follow the flowchart. All right, so the first step that we need to do is we need to either live in a state that offers this lease incentive, or we have to find a state close to us that does. Now, Toyota Financial Services, they basically provide this lease incentive to certain parts of the country. Why they don't make it available on all parts of the country, I'm really not sure, but it seems like the place that gets the most primes are the ones that get this lease incentive. And so you look at the states back east like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, some of the areas down south, and also some of the West Coast states, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, are some of the states that I know that actually offer this lease incentive currently. And so basically, first you need to do is check to see if your state is participating in this. And the simple way of doing this is basically going to Toyota's website and then basically look for the RAV4 Prime and then click on the local deals, and it'll show you if that $6,500 kind of cashback is what they call it, incentive is available to you. And if it's available to your state, then that's great. Then you can actually find a RAV4 Prime in your state and take advantage of it. Now, if you don't live in a state that has this tax incentive available to you, or this lease incentive available to you, then you've got to find a state close to you that does. And so the easiest way of doing that is basically, once again, going to Toyota's website, and then they have a way where you can go down and you can change the zip code that you're looking for a car from. And so what you would do is change in, find a local state, find zip codes from that particular state, and then type in that zip code. And then once again, go to the RAV4 Prime and click on the local incentives and see if that state is being offered that federal tax, or that tax, not tax incentive, but the lease incentive. And so once you've done that, you might have to click on a couple of states close to you to find a state that is offering that. But once you've found a state that's relatively close to you that's offering that, then you basically have to find a car within that state that you then want to purchase. So to find a RAV4 Prime, probably the easiest tool is Toyota's website. They've got an inventory tool where you can look for RAV4 Primes, and it actually lets you kind of search based on the trim as well as the color of the vehicle. And you can actually change the zip code within that tool, and you can also search up to a certain amount of miles away. And so, yeah, once you've basically found that vehicle that you really want, then our next step is to go to that dealer. And I would just make sure, I would give that dealer a call, say, hey, I see that you have a RAV4 Prime, I'm very interested in it. But also just double check to make sure that they're taking advantage of that basically lease incentive. I think there are some dealers that actually don't do that, and even though they live in a state where it's available to them. But you just want to double check with the dealer to make sure that they are actually taking advantage of that. And then you basically just wheel and deal. And so, you can do those kinds of things over the phone. You can also, kind of do that in person as well, but you might be traveling a bit of ways once you found the Prime that you're very interested in. But I wouldn't pay more than MSRP at this point. Lots of dealers are offering discounts on RAV4 Primes. I don't think Toyota is really having all that difficult time selling cars, but a lot of vehicle manufacturers are. But they are offering discounts on RAV4 Primes. Even in California, I've seen posts where people are getting up to $2,000 off on a RAV4 Prime. And I've actually even seen on other parts of the country where dealers are actually offering discounts on XSEs with a premium package. And so, yeah, for sure don't play over MSRP, but I would really try to make a bargain for under MSRP. And basically, the lower that you can get that price, of course, the lower that you're going to actually pay for the vehicle. And so, yeah, definitely you need to try to get the best deal. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how the lease deals work. And I apologize, I already said I'm not a financial kind of professional or an accountant. I've never actually even done a lease before. And so there are some terms that I'm kind of new to. So I'm actually going to look at my computer here as we're kind of going over these different terminologies that you need to be familiar with and kind of what they mean. I'm actually going to use a lease agreement that was done in Colorado to kind of talk about these things. But basically, the first line there is the capitalized cost, which is basically the agreed upon price of the vehicle. And any other things, like if you had a service contract on it or anything like that. But basically, it's the price of the vehicle. That's the capital cost. B is the capital cost reduction. And this is where that lease incentive comes into play. So basically, you're going to get $6,500 off of that capital cost. And if you do a down payment or if you trade a car in or something like that, that's also going to lower down that capital cost. Now, on that Reddit forum, most of the folks that have done that lease deal, they recommend not putting cash down. You really don't benefit from that since you're going to pay it off anyway. And so I'd recommend not actually putting down a down payment. Now, C is the adjusted capitalization cost. So this is basically the gross capitalized cost minus the capital cost reduction. D is the residual value. So D is basically what Toyota thinks that vehicle is going to be worth at the end of the term. And so whether it's 24 months or 36 months or 48 months for the lease, that's what they think the vehicle is going to be worth at the end of the term. And the residual value, if you actually happen to actually do the lease, basically that would be the amount that you would pay at the end of the term to actually purchase that vehicle. The depreciation, which is E, is basically the adjusted capitalized cost minus the residual value. And so that's the depreciation basically on that particular vehicle. And that's one of the things that actually goes into your lease payment. The next value that we're looking at is rent cost. And so your lease payment really comes down to three things. It's the depreciation, it's the rent cost, and it's taxes. Now the rent cost is basically, it's kind of like, what you're paying to rent the vehicles, because basically when you're doing a lease, in fact, you're basically renting the vehicle from the manufacturer, from Toyota Financial Services. And basically the rent cost is primarily, it's the interest on the adjusted capitalization cost. And sometimes it's known as something called the money factor or the lease factor. But basically the depreciation and the rent cost and taxes is basically you add all those things up and then you divide it by the lease term. So whether it's 24 months or 36 months or 48 months. And that's basically your lease payment, your monthly lease payment. Now, that's kind of all I really know about leases, but one thing I do know is that pretty much every financial advisor out there is going to tell you not to do leases, because you're basically going to pay more for a lease than you will if you try to buy the car outright. And so there's folks that actually do leases. Maybe they want to have a new car, every 3 years or every 2 years, and they'll take advantage of the lease. Maybe that's folks with extra money. They'll try to get you into a lease because they actually can lower the payment, but in reality, you're just going to pay more over time, and you're going to continue to pay more and more for trying to get into a vehicle. And so, yeah, I would really recommend that you don't actually lease the vehicle. Of course, we're going to basically lease the vehicle, but we're really not going to lease it. We're going to lease it for a month, and then we're going to buy it outright. All right, so now you found a state that you can take advantage of the lease incentive. You found your RAV4 Prime. You've made the best deal. You kind of understand leasing. Now it's time to actually sit down with the finance guy and actually do your lease. Now, I would recommend that you do not sign the paperwork at that time. Have him start to draw up the paperwork. Make sure that as he's given you the documents, go line by line through every figure and make sure that you understand exactly what those numbers mean, and have the financial person at the dealership make sure that they explain everything to you in detail so that you can understand it. Then basically just walk away. Say, I need to go home. I need to think about this. I need to talk. Give it to your wife. Have your wife look at it, or your friends. You can post the paperwork on Reddit just to say, hey, is this a good deal? Does everything look right here? But make sure you understand everything. And once you have a good understanding and you feel like this is a good deal and everything's appropriate, then go ahead and sign on that dotted line. Now, before I would actually do that, so as you're getting relatively close to finalizing that paperwork, I would actually, so there's two things. You either are going to pay cash for the buyout, so you have enough cash that you're going to do it yourself, or you need to get a loan for it. So if you are going to need to get a loan for it, I would go ahead and start that process a little bit earlier. Certainly probably before that financial paperwork is drawn up, as you're probably starting to look for that car and getting serious about it. Talk to your credit union or your bank and say, okay, this is my plan. I'm going to be leasing this, but I want to buy it out very quickly. And so what kind of loan can I get? Now, typically you're going to pay more interest on a loan for a used car as opposed to a new car. But this kind of gets a little bit kind of gray because it's almost a new car. It's basically just, kind of 1 month old. You're basically buying it new right after you've leased it. So hopefully your financial institution is familiar with this and can offer you a really good interest rate on that kind of used car purchase buyout. All right, so now that you've signed on the dotted line, you basically got the lease complete. At this point, you're basically just going to work with Toyota Financial Services to do the actual buyout. Now, there is an exception to this. There are a couple of states that require you to actually go to the dealership to do the buyout. And so I put up a little map on the screen, and basically the states, they're not actually on the map. It's Iowa, the District of Columbia, Hawaii, Maine, North Carolina, South Dakota, and Wisconsin, as well as any states that lease through Southeast Toyota Finance. And so these states you actually have to visit the dealer, and that's unfortunate, because you might actually be purchasing from out of state. Hopefully they'll let you do so remotely and sign the documents remotely. But typically they will charge you some sort of a document fee for doing this, like $5.99 or $699. So hopefully you don't live in one of those states that requires that, but if you do, just know up front that you're probably going to spend just a little bit more. All right, so once you've signed the paperwork, basically the clock is running. And so you make that initial lease payment at the dealership before you drive off the lot. And you really want to try to finalize everything before that second month or before that next 30 days, is because basically if you don't have to pay that depreciation. That's going to not go against you, but you are going to have to pay that rent payment. And so yeah, you really want to try to get it done in 30 days. The first step in that process is basically to create your TFS account or your Toyota Financial Services account on their website. Typically between 2 and 5 days, they'll get all the paperwork and they'll put you in the system. And then you basically go into the website. Now, I think you actually might get an email or some paperwork sent to you, but I wouldn't wait for that. You can just go directly to the website and you can go to create an account, and then you basically type in the last 8 of the vehicle identification number and the last 4 of your social security number. And once you're in the system, it'll recognize you and let you create that account. Now, once that account is created, then you're basically going to call Toyota Financial Services, and you're actually going to ask for the lease buyout specialist. And so that's a special kind of department or a couple of persons that do this all the time. And when you get a hold of that person, you're basically going to say, hey, can I get my buyout amount? And so they'll let you know what that buyout amount is. And they'll offer to send you a packet through mail, but they can also send it to you through email. So you can get basically that packet and you can print it out and fill it out. And so I would recommend that you have them email it to you. That will save you a lot of time. Now, if you kind of want an estimate on what that buyout is going to cost you, let's go ahead and look at that Colorado lease agreement again, so I can give you an example. So basically the payout amount, what it is it's the residual value. So on that particular lease, that residual value was $27,123. And then you pay also for the depreciation of the vehicle. You don't pay for the full depreciation though, because once again, we paid for the first month of the lease. And so we paid for that depreciation already. So you basically pay for the depreciation minus the first month that you've already paid for. And that amount would be $8,402. And the last thing that you would pay for is basically your sales tax. And so every state kind of charges a different interest or a different percentage for the sales tax. I just did kind of Nevada, and I figured that to be about $3,000. And so basically the payout amount that I kind of think that I would actually pay would be $38,525. Now, if you notice, they actually did do a down payment of $5,000 to reduce their capitalized cost. And so if you go back and look at that number, it wasn't $6,500 for the adjust capitalization cost. It was like $10,000 or something dollars. And so they actually put a down payment, which would actually make this buyout actually a little less than you would probably normally see. Now, when that buyout specialist basically gives you the amount, sometimes Toyota Financial Services will actually collect that sales tax. Certain states want that to happen. Other states, you actually pay the sales tax at the DMV. And so Toyota Financial Services will know whether or not they're supposed to collect that sales tax or not. So at this point, you'll have the paperwork basically from Toyota Financial Services in email. Now, if you're choosing to do the buyout yourself with cash, you would then fill out that paperwork and basically send that back to Toyota Financial Services. If you need to get a loan basically for that amount, you're actually going to give that packet and that information to that institution who is then going to fill that information out. Nevertheless, basically fill out the packet and then you want to send it back to Toyota Financial Services. Some folks in Reddit recommend that you use a cashier's check or a certified check. Others will recommend that you do a personal check so that the money isn't actually taken out of your account. I probably would advise a cashier's check just to simplify the process. One thing that you do want to do, however, is you want to make sure on the actual check itself, you want to put the VIN number of your vehicle, and you also want to put your Toyota Financial Services account number. Now, when you're sending that packet back to Toyota Financial Services, you probably want to take a paper clip and put the check, just so it doesn't get separated, on top of that paperwork. And there's actually two addresses that you send the check to Toyota Financial Services. There's kind of like a one-day overnight address that you would use if you're overnighting the information or the packet to Toyota Financial Services, and then there's a non-overnight. And so depending on how you're sending it, make sure you use the appropriate address. One thing that pretty much everybody says though is do not use the United States Postal Service, USPS, when you're sending the packet to Toyota Financial Services. Everybody recommends that you either use FedEx or UPS to actually handle that. Not exactly sure why. I think some people have had some problems using USPS. But of course, make sure that you, if you do overnight, make sure you get the tracking number. If you do like a 2-day, make sure you get the tracking number. And then keep checking that tracking number to make sure that they've received it. And when they have received it, basically either that same day or the next day, I would give Toyota Financial Services a call just to make sure that they've got your information, that they've got the packet, they got the check, and that nothing is amiss. So that will kind of, you've done your part in making sure that they have all the information, and that will take some of the stress off of you and will speed things along. All right, so after we've got all that done, we kind of take a break at this point because basically you're just waiting for Toyota Financial Services to do all that process, to process that transaction and basically send you some paperwork back. And the paperwork, it will include a form basically. So if when you made the payment, if you did the sales taxes, because they were required to collect that, there'll be a form that you would show your DMV that you actually paid the sales taxes. There's going to be a bill of sale. There should be a lien release. There should be a power of attorney, as well as a signed over title. And so you might want to check with your local DMV if there are any other forms that are required in order for you to register that vehicle. Make sure that Toyota Financial Services knows about that. And at this point, I would probably check, twice a week or so, just to see where Toyota Financial Services is with this process. Because basically you really have 30 days to get this done, and you want to get your vehicle registered. Now, if you do find that this is taking a little more time than you thought, you might actually have to reach out to the dealer that you originally purchased the vehicle from, just to get an extension on kind of that temporary permit or that temporary license plate that basically lets you drive that vehicle. So yeah, don't worry about that. The dealer can take care of that. But basically, it's playing a waiting game. And then basically, after you've gotten all your paperwork back, then it's basically just time to register your car. And congratulations, you've probably saved about $5,500 over purchasing this the traditional way. And yeah, it's a little bit of work, it's a little bit of time, it's a little bit of research, but ultimately, this is probably going to be the best hourly wage that you could do. Let's say you spend 30 hours on this process and you save $5,500. That's a pretty good hourly wage. So I think I mentioned this before. I didn't actually do this process. This is my 2021 RAV4 Prime. I got this before the federal tax credit expired, and so I was able to get that money back on my taxes. But there's a lot of resources out there, so I did this video. Hopefully this will help you get a little more information about what to do. I would highly recommend that you look at and Reddit. I'll have the link to the Colorado retrospective, kind of the 30 days and his, kind of the process that he went through and how much time it took him. And there's a lot of, if you just go to the RAV4 Prime forum on Reddit and you type in lease, there's a lot of folks that talk about their experiences. You can also find information like on the Facebook groups for the RAV4 Prime. But yeah, I think it's not too hard of a process, and I would encourage you to investigate it. And I really hope this video is helpful, and hopefully I tried to combine as much information as I could and as many tips that I saw on the Reddit groups and the Reddit forums, so that would give you that information up front. And yeah, if you did learn something, I really appreciate you liking this video, and also consider subscribing to my channel. And I hope to see you in the next one again very soon.